The strength of Hurricane George is being felt along Florida's Gulf Coast. Pensacola Beach is being pounded. Dangerous surf, high wind, and rain are plaguing the area, causing severe flooding.
And here in Biloxi, Mississippi, water is already on the rise. We'll show you some pictures of how it's affecting this area in just a moment. Stay tuned.
Hurricane George is making landfall. Hello, and thanks for tuning in for this edition of Weather Center. I'm Lisa Moser. In just a minute, I'll show you why people in the Northeast should keep those umbrellas handy today. But for now, Dennis Smith is in our forecast center with the very latest on Hurricane George. Dennis?
Thank you very much, Lisa. As once again, Hurricane George, this is the 10th day it has been a hurricane. It has created a lot of problems in its path, over 300 people losing their lives, well over $1 billion in damage, especially throughout the Caribbean. And now residents of New Orleans, throughout Louisiana and Mississippi coast, anxiety continues to rise as the storm's just offshore. The very latest satellite perspective still showing the eye, the center of the storm, offshore, but will continue to advance towards the northwest. We can already see the clouds and rain buffeting the coastline, and again, with the storm surge and heavy rain forecasted, will continue to pose a problem for areas anywhere from New Orleans all the way over to around the Pensacola area. The very latest position on Hurricane George continues to be about 175 miles southeast of New Orleans, with winds up to 110 miles an hour, putting it as a strong Category 2. Still moving northwest, but what's the key here is it's moving northwest at only 8 miles an hour. That has slowed, and that could cause some more problems as we go in the future, so we will continue to monitor that. How about the watches and warnings, bringing you up to date on what's going on with the anywhere from the Morgan City, Louisiana area to Pensacola hurricane warnings, meaning the potential of that storm affecting you within the next 24 hours. Be prepared now. We're already seeing actions taking place in and around the New Orleans area. Be prepared for hurricane force winds, storm surge, and heavy rainfall. Outside that area westward to Intercoastal City, a hurricane watch remains in effect, and from Panama City to St. Mark's also continue with a hurricane watch. We're also monitoring the very latest with crews out in the field. This go-around we're going to be hearing from Bill Keneally in New Orleans and also Jim Cantori, who's positioned around Biloxi. Jim, let's go with you first to find out the very latest there.
Well, Dennis, we continue to get this steady light rain here, and the winds occasionally kick up 15, 25 miles an hour, as we've seen on gusts from our storm tracker. But we've also seen the water rise, and right along this beachfront there is a US 90, and it doesn't take much water to cause some localized flooding here. This is only 12 blocks to my east, and you can see what's happened as a result of the water rise here. That has allowed parts of US 90 to flood. So people, I think, getting a little bit of a shock here. It's like, ooh, the hurricane's still a ways away, and we're starting to get the flooding. And I'll tell you, folks, this is nothing compared to what you're going to see as this hurricane approaches. This is nearly a major hurricane here. As we look out now into the water, you can see that the pier that we had, this is called Veterans Avenue Pier, is still kind of hanging in out there, and there isn't a lot of increase in the wave height because of the barrier islands that are offshore. But what we will see as the storm nears, Dennis, is the surge, and the surge will pick up the water. Could be as high as 10 to 15 feet, which would be well over the top of that pier. And that's what is the big concern around here, in addition to the potential flooding afterward because of the slow movement. Another area very susceptible to hurricanes is New Orleans, Louisiana. Let's go there for a live report with Bill Keneally. Bill?
All right, Jim, thanks a lot. Still rain-free here in the Big Easy, but the clouds are rolling in and the wind is definitely stiffening. Now, we're atop the Riverview room of the Jackson Brewery, so we're a little bit enhanced with our wind. I'd put it in the neighborhood of 30 to 35 miles per hour, still generally from a northeasterly direction. Check out behind me, though. We do see some blue sky out there as we look all the way up Toulouse Street. And if you go all the way to the horizon line, you'd be up around the lakefront area over by the Lake Pontchartrain Causeway. But again, looking back to the west and northwest, there's still some blue sky out there. The causeway is open. Interstate 10 and 12 are still open. The closing of those roadways will be determined by the weather, how quickly the weather does deteriorate here. And again, the rain is going to be the other major facet, but it still looks like about a half an hour out. So folks, shore up your plans and then make sure you batten down for Hurricane George here in southeastern Louisiana. Now we'll turn it back to Dennis.
Thank you very much. Bill Keneally in New Orleans, Louisiana, making the Big Easy uneasy right now. And also we heard from Jim Cantori, who's in Biloxi, Mississippi. Joining me now is our hurricane specialist, Dr. Steve Lyons, with an update on what's going on with this particular storm. What's your concern? What's your worry as you're watching this storm move ever so closely to the shoreline?
Well, the two things that are always the most concern are water, and that's in association with storm surge and also rainfall. The rainfall potential in this hurricane is very, very large if it slows to a screeching halt as it comes on shore. The other thing, of course, is the storm surge right at the coast is very, very important to watch out for as well, because the bottom is very shallow in the greater New Orleans area out off into the Biloxi, Mississippi area, and that could be a very dangerous situation as well.
Authorities in Louisiana must be concerned as well. Already they're talking about the interstate system perhaps closing down. Interstate 10, a major artery in and around the New Orleans area, and some of the major arteries, especially the elevated ones.
That's correct, and the primary reason for that is going to be the storm surge. They're expecting high water to cover over some of those roadways, and the worst scenario is to have people drive into that unknowingly and lose their lives.
In fact, we have a phone number we can pass along to you, giving you, if you want to find out more information in the Louisiana area and some traffic information. We understand it's pretty thick moving westward out of New Orleans right now. 1-800-469-4828. Again, 1-800-469-4828 for the latest Louisiana traffic information for evacuations that may be going on in that immediate area. Well, New Orleans is not the only area that will be impacted by this particular hurricane. And in fact, Steve, if you'd outline anywhere that's in the hurricane warning, what they might expect.
Okay, out here in the Florida Panhandle, as we've seen already, Kristen moved in from the coast, but very high waves. We've had wave measurements out at some buoys out here as high as 33 feet. They're going to come crashing into the beach here in another few hours. So high waves, and that will produce a water level rise on its own, unrelated to the surge directly, and that will also cause a lot of beach erosion along the beach out there. A little less surge, but still a little bit of surge. As we come over more toward the track forecast, which is somewhere in this general area here, then we get the surge, which is very, very important for both New Orleans and the Biloxi area, all the way over to the Mobile area. Of course, wind is important for Mobile, and some rain, and then in the heart of the area where the hurricane is going to strike, where the heavy rain is going to occur, that's going to be an important issue as well, and of course that depends on how fast it moves.
And the surge anywhere, we've got this outlined for New Orleans. If it were to come in, it is a strong category 2 right now, could become a 3, and this is for New Orleans specifically. How about from New Orleans all the way over to Pensacola?
Well, over to Biloxi, it would go down about 40%, so they would be looking at more like a 6 to 10 foot range. And then as we go farther to the east, it would be more like 3 to 6 feet, but that 3 to 6 feet would be augmented by the water level rise associated with waves, which would keep it back up at about 8 to 10 feet over there as well.
So right now, New Orleans probably the greatest threat as far as the storm surge with this one.
That is correct.
How about rainfall? We're going to look at the satellite perspective, then go into our rainfall. Looks like some is already buffeting on the coast right now.
Some rain already occurring, and of course, typically what we, this easiest thing to remember is if you take the speed of the storm, which we would call, well, let's call it S, and take 100 divided by the speed of the storm, that gives you a rough approximation to how much rain might fall. And so the slower the storm moves, the higher that number is and the more rainfall potential. Right now we're looking at anywhere from 10 to 15 inches, but locally it could be as high as 25 inches, 2 feet of rain, if it really slows down to a screeching halt as it moves over the coast.
Okay.
We really hope that doesn't happen.
Very good. Thank you. Dr. Steve Lyons, our hurricane specialist, with updated information. Of course, we'll keep you focused on this particular storm along the Gulf Coast. And if you're unable to tune into your cable network, we urge you to tap online, internet, weather.com for the very latest on what's going on with this particular storm. A lot of weather going on elsewhere across the country. With the latest, here's Lisa.
Thanks, Dennis Smith from the Forecast Center. More updates coming up shortly. It'll be a stormy afternoon this Sunday across parts of New York, Philadelphia. If you're doing some traveling here, we do have a frontal boundary that brought stormy conditions across Buffalo, Watertown, and it does seem like we'll see them refire up anywhere from Erie, Pennsylvania, getting over to Syracuse, New York this hour. It could be a bit stormy for you. This frontal boundary will continue to drape across the Northeast as we head into the afternoon. Very warm temperatures ahead of the frontal boundary, but behind it, temperatures much cooler. And of course, the frontal boundary is associated with these lightning strikes you see on the lightning map here. And it's not the only area that's stormy. We're also looking at Tahoe, the Lake Tahoe area again here. Some rain showers have moved in from Susanville and may even get as far southwest as San Francisco for today. Looking at the temperatures right now, you'll notice that we're looking at Bismarck only at 53 degrees this hour. Meanwhile, around Memphis, however, we'll see temperatures in the upper 80s, 86 degrees in Little Rock, Arkansas. Well, for the forecast, as we head into the evening hours, the frontal boundary pushes a little bit further into the
Gulf Shores, Alabama takes a beating as Hurricane George moves closer to the Gulf coastline. High waves threaten structures. Waves rushed in, flooding the beach area roads, forcing evacuations across the Gulf states. Welcome to Weather Center. I'm Mike Bono. More than 1.5 million people are also ordered to leave the New Orleans, Louisiana area. However, heavy traffic in some places are making it difficult to get out. For the latest on Hurricane George, let's go to Dennis Smith in the Forecast Center.
Thank you, Mike. Hurricane George, we've been talking about it as a hurricane for over 10 days now, and it still hasn't made landfall for the second time in the northern Gulf of Mexico. Satellite perspective bringing us up to date on what's going on. There you can see the center of the storm still about 170 so miles offshore from New Orleans, Louisiana, and moving northwest, giving an uncomfortable feeling, maybe an uneasy feeling to the Big Easy as people continue to evacuate from that area and along the Mississippi, Alabama, and Florida coastlines. Of course, the winds continue to crank on up now to 110 miles an hour, putting it in the Category 2 of the Safford-Simpson scale of category classifications, now at about 165 miles southeast of New Orleans, Louisiana, moving northwest at 8. Again, already we've had evacuations have been taking place in much of the area around New Orleans, all the way over the Mississippi, Alabama, and Florida panhandle coastlines. Latest on watches and warnings, finding out once again hurricane warnings, meaning the likelihood of hurricane force conditions within the next 24 hours, including winds over 75 miles an hour, heavy rain, and a storm surge anywhere from Morgan City to Pensacola, to the west of Morgan City to Intercoastal City, and to the east of Panama City to St. Mark's. Hurricane watches are currently in effect. Of course, we'll keep you updated on the very latest in this area as well. Joining us now by phone is Lieutenant Colonel Ronnie Jones. He's from the Louisiana State Police. Give us an update on what's going on in that immediate area. Lieutenant Colonel Ronnie Jones, could you give us the status on the plan to perhaps close some of the interstates in Louisiana?
Sure can. Good afternoon. We just got off the phone with our New Orleans area troop commander, and we have begun the process at noon of shutting down interstates 10 and 610 out of the New Orleans area. We're essentially going to secure that city. Those persons who have not yet left will not likely be able to get out at this point, and that's simply because we don't want to get people trapped on highways where we have high winds and rising water. Entrance into the city from the east will not be permitted. We're essentially going to cut that highway that comes in Interstate 10 from the east side. We're not going to permit people to come that way. They'll have to travel across Interstate 12 across the top of the Lake Pontchartrain area. The process has begun. We're using city police, sheriff's departments, local officials in those areas. It's going to take us a matter of time to do this, but it's critical for the safety of the people to have them shelter in place or in one of the safe refuges that have been established by the mayor in the city of New Orleans.
Can you give us an idea of what you could pass along to people that maybe have not left their homes yet but considering evacuating?
If they're in the city of New Orleans, we would urge them to get to a place that's high off the ground. The Superdome has been opened, so has the Convention Center. We understand some other locations are being broadcast in the New Orleans area as having space for evacuees. Those people need to rush to make those arrangements and get in place because the winds are starting to pick up a little bit. The rain, obviously, the bands are going to move in this afternoon. Even though the surface streets will remain open as long as the city can keep those streets open, this is a dangerous storm. We don't want people outside. The more quickly they can get in place, the better off they will be. If they're going to get out on the road, they need to make sure their cars are roadworthy. Throughout the night and the day, we've had to deal with vehicles that have gone 20, 30 miles, stopped, they're pulled off on the side of the road. We've been moving people off highways throughout the southeast part of the state for the last 12, 14 hours.
All right, thank you very much. We appreciate your time. We know you're a very busy man right now, and we appreciate your input. Again, we heard from Lieutenant Colonel Ronnie Jones from Louisiana State Police. We've been covering it with our own crews throughout the Gulf Coast region. At this go-around, we're going to be hearing from Kristen Dodd coming in the Pensacola area, and also from Bill Keneally in New Orleans. Let's start with Kristen with the very latest from Pensacola.
Well, Dennis, we have shifted our position slightly. We are now in Pensacola Bay. We want to give everyone at home a really good indication of the fact that even though the hurricane generally does a lot of beach damage, here, even in the interior bays, we are really taking a pounding. This area is Sanders Beach, and behind me you can see how the waves are lapping up and just smacking up against the boardwalk. This normally is a beach area. It goes out about 15 yards where you now see some of the waves coming on up. We also see some fishing piers in the area. This one over here is already being inundated with plenty of water. I'm told by the locals here that normally on a calm day, the water level is almost 4 to 5 feet below where you do see the end of that fishing pier. Now the winds have picked up considerably, and the rain is also now beginning to sting my face and moving off horizontally. It looks like we still have not seen the worst of this storm yet. Now let's join Bill Keneally in New Orleans.
All right, Kristen, thanks a lot. Thankfully, nothing of that magnitude here yet in the Big Easy. We have clouded over. The winds are gusting at times as high as 40 miles per hour. By the way, we're at the Riverview Room high atop the Jackson Brewery, and behind me is the river. Let's take a look. Here is the Mississippi River behind me. The bridge is still open, incidentally. I do see cars going by. There are white caps on the Mississippi River. The harbor police tell me they may very well have to shut this down before long, but they are allowing any ships that are out there in distress in the Gulf of Mexico to work their way in to seek some safe shelter from this hurricane. Just to add on to what the officer said earlier, yes, the Superdome is open.
Joining me now is our hurricane specialist, Dr. Steve Lyons, spinning off of what they both commented on. It looked like it was really rough stuff in Pensacola right now. Do you think Kristen's going to see more of that as the afternoon wears on?
That's right. The strongest winds are not there yet, and the highest seas are not there yet either. We still have reports of 30 to 35-foot seas out over the open Gulf of Mexico, and those are about ready to impinge on the coast in another 3 hours to 5 hours.
And how about Bill? Obviously, Bill's going to see a lot more rain and wind yet to come.
That's right. Bill's still well away from the circulation center on the west side, and that'll change rather rapidly this evening and into tomorrow morning.
Hurricane George is making an impact on the northern Gulf. Let's describe, it's a little bit different depending on where you're at. So let's look at the expected impact across that area.
That's right. Depending on where you're located, the impacts are quite different. Over to the east, in the area of Pensacola, the high waves and are associated with high water, significant beach erosion. Of course, Kristen is inland. She is not at the beach. The beach is experiencing very high waves, and there's less surge, but high water associated with the breaking waves. In the in-between areas between Pensacola and Biloxi, we have some surge potential that will increase, high winds coming up, and of course heavy rain. And in the greater New Orleans area, basically from Biloxi, that includes Gulfport, Bay St. Louis, and Pascagoula. Surge it could be potentially disastrous. Rain, heavy rain potential as the system slows, and also very strong winds.
Magnitude of surge in Pensacola versus New Orleans?
Double in New Orleans, probably.
And if it cranks on up anymore, it's a strong category 2 now. If it goes up to a 3, we could be talking about a storm surge in excess of 15 feet.
That's correct. And as you can see here, the New Orleans storm potential, and right now we're at the upper end of this, so 10 to 15 foot range. We could go higher if it intensifies to a 3, and it's not impossible. It's still got another 6 to 12 hours to go before landfall.
Another concern is heavy rainfall as we look at the latest radar in and around the Florida Panhandle all the way back into around Mobile. Very heavy rainfall will continue to advance on up through Louisiana as well. And so if there is a flood situation developing in low-lying areas, we suggest you go to higher ground. And also keep in mind to not walk or drive through floodwaters. Drive away from flooded areas, never through them. Don't forget children and pets, keep them away from the flooded areas. Be a good idea to have a possible evacuation, and also make sure you contact a person outside the area. Let them know of your plans. But we could see as much as 15, 20 inches of rainfall with this.
It's critically dependent on how fast the hurricane moves. And right now it's moving at 8 miles an hour. That gives about 12 to 15 inches conservatively. Could be more locally, and if it slows down more than that, we could be buried with a couple of feet of rain there in the greater New Orleans area.
Yeah, that could be a mess. All righty. Thank you. Dr. Steve Lyons with his information.
The central Gulf Coast is taking a beating and will continue to do so as Hurricane George slowly makes landfall. Dangerous surf is pounding the shore at this hour. Evacuations are common in the Gulf Coast states. Hurricane George making landfall this afternoon. I'm Lisa Moser. Thank you for tuning in for this edition of Weather Center. Coming up in the Northeast, I'll tell you why you shouldn't put too many plans into your outdoor activities, but we are looking at Hurricane George, and Dennis Smith has the latest. He is in the forecast center at this very moment and has the very latest details. Dennis?
Thank you very much, Lisa. Again, we're covering George. This is 10 days that we've been covering George is a hurricane making landfall throughout much of the northern Caribbean and now sliding on up into the Gulf of Mexico, working its way towards the area anywhere from Louisiana to the Florida Panhandle. Very latest satellite perspective bringing us up to date. There you can see the center of the storm as it continues to inch closer and closer to the shoreline. Still some 150 plus miles from New Orleans, Louisiana, but its impact, as you can see with the cloud cover, anywhere from central areas of the Florida Panhandle up through southern Alabama, Mississippi, and much of the southern one-third of Louisiana. Will continue to lift on off towards the northwest at about 8. Latest information we had available as of 12 p.m. Central Daylight Time puts it 155 miles southeast of New Orleans. 110 miles an hour puts it in a Category 2 on the Safford-Simpson scale. The categories go from 1 to 5. Moving northwest at about 8 miles an hour. In response to that movement and the intensity of the storm, hurricane warnings continue to be posted from Morgan City, Louisiana, all the way over to Pensacola, meaning in the path of a hurricane warning, you could experience hurricane conditions, in some cases immediately to within the next 24 hours. So be prepared for it. Whether you be in low-lying areas, evacuating that area, living in mobile homes, not a safe place to be in hurricane-force winds, or if you're in an area that is prone to damage because of that force of winds, west of Morgan City to Intercoastal City and east of Panama City in the area outlined in yellow represents hurricane watches that are in effect. We've had some scenes from Pensacola Beach during the course of the morning. It has been pretty rough there. In fact, it looks like Pensacola Beach experiencing some deteriorating conditions with already some beach erosion, some heavy downpours, some gusty winds. We've even seen some scenes from Kristen Dodd since this time that has really been rough with the waves and the gusty winds, sometimes in excess of definitely tropical storm strength, but approaching hurricane strength as it continues to inch closer and closer to the shoreline. Joining us now by phone from the Louisiana State Police in that area is Howard McKee from New Orleans with an update on what's going on as far as the road works in and around the New Orleans area and how people are responding to, in some case, evacuations. Sergeant McKee, could you give us an update on what you're experiencing there?
Yes, at about starting at noon today, we started closing the Hugh P. Long Bridge, the Crescent City connection, and Interstate 10 in Orleans and Jefferson Parish. At 2 o'clock this afternoon, Central Standard Time, we will be closing the Causeway and US 61 in the Orleans area. Traffic that would happen to be traveling from Interstate 10 westbound through Louisiana, they're diverting it through I-12 to go on the north shore of Lake Pontchartrain.
What advice would you pass along to individuals that may be watching the Weather Channel now and still planning to do some traveling out of that area?
Out of that area? Well, we've given advance warning that this was going to be done. We've talked about that for the last 16 hours. Access into the city and egress from it is now limited and restricted. So people who are still there should take shelter. We have opened, the Superdome has been opened as a shelter facility, so they need to take the next minutes and hours to transition to a safe shelter.
All right, thank you very much. We've been hearing from Sergeant Howard McKee. Thank you for your time. We know you were very busy during these times. He was speaking to us from Louisiana State Police. Updating us on the scenario 2 on Louisiana and its roadways. If you'd like some more information about traffic information and what the roadways may be like as far as traffic in and out of the area, 1-800-469-4828. Again, 1-800-469-4828. Joining me now is our hurricane specialist, Dr. Steve Lyons, with further information on what's going on with this particular storm. Right now, what is the impact that it's going to be making along Louisiana to the Florida coastline?
Well, right now we've got some big surf all along the Florida Peninsula, and that's going to continue the next 24 to 36 hours, even well after landfall. A lot of beach erosion there. Farther off to the west, we're going to continue to have quite a bit of storm surge, wind, and rain. And there's one interesting scenario here we should mention. The track has taken a little bit of a northward wobble here, and if it happens to come in just north of the New Orleans area, that would be very good news, because the wind would then be offshore and quite a bit of the extreme storm surge would be limited. If it comes in south in the New Orleans area, the storm surge would be maximized, and that would be the worst case scenario. So if it's heading up toward the Biloxi or Gulfport area, it may be bad for them, but it would be better for the greater New Orleans area. So very, very significant subtleties there on the exact landfall location. The best thing we can tell you, of course, is to expect the worst, and if you don't get it, then that's a benefit.
As we track this storm on in, and you mentioned anywhere from storm surge to heavy rainfall, very important on the movement, how quickly and how strong the system is when it comes in.
Absolutely. We expect it still to become a Category 3 before landfall. It still looks very good on satellite imagery. The great news, of course, is the aircraft reconnaissance has not seen any significant pressure falls the last 6 or 8 hours since I came in early this morning. And if that continues, we'll have landfall with Category 2. Timing-wise, you can see Tuesday it's here, Monday it's still here, and Sunday it's here. Well, that's a very, very slow movement, and of course, when we have that slow movement, the rain potential becomes very large, Dennis.
In fact, you were commenting earlier that that slow movement could bring about some very intense amounts of rainfall over that region.
Absolutely, and you can see here, these are just estimates, and this would be generally in the track of the hurricane as an example. Currently, it's moving at 8 miles per hour. If it continued at that, we could expect on the order of 1 foot to 1.5 feet of rain. If it moved much slower than that, you could get up to almost 2 feet of rain, and of course, if it stalls out or moves extremely slow, you could get up to 3 feet of rain. And of course, we've seen that in previous hurricanes and tropical storms where they stall. We've gotten huge amounts of rain. Alvin, Texas is a classic example of that, where well above 2 feet of rain fell in a short period of time.
Another facet of this particular hurricane that may pose a few problems is the potential for severe weather. Tornado watch out for sections of Mississippi, moving into Alabama and the Florida Panhandle. Right now, Okaloosa reporting a tornado warning, so be prepared for the possibility of some tornadoes. So as we look at this, over the next several hours through the evening hours, we're going to be talking about a storm surge moving on in. We're going to be talking about the prospect for severe weather. We're going to talk about some very heavy rainfall, and then even that potential for flooding as we move into the next couple of days.
That's right. The rain flooding will be a little bit down the road, but be starting, and that severe weather warning there is associated with a rain band that's just affecting the coast there, the Florida Peninsula, and so that's the first big, strong rain band from the hurricane coming on shore.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Steve Lyons, for your words of wisdom. Of course, if you're unable to tune into the Weather Channel for your very latest information on George, we invite you to turn to your internet, and your provider should give you weather.com, and that way you can get the very latest information via your computer. For the very latest going on elsewhere across the country, we turn you back to the studio with Lisa.
Thanks. Dennis Smith from the Forecast Center updating us every half hour. In the Northeast, we have a frontal boundary that is going to pose a threat to your travel this afternoon. The frontal boundary is associated with some very nasty thunderstorms at times. We're talking about large hail. That's a possibility, as well as a lot of lightning from cloud to ground, and even seeing some very high wind gusts, around 50 to 75 miles per hour is what some of the reports came in yesterday. We could see that again for today. You'll notice that the stretch of showers and thunderstorms is mainly over the western part of New York State. From Buffalo, not quite into Albany just yet, but all along this frontal boundary, we're going to see the rain showers and the thunderstorms for this afternoon. So we'll be watching out for Philadelphia as well as Boston as we head into this evening. And high pressure over the Carolinas, really nice. Cooler temperatures behind the frontal boundary. And talk about cool, well, Lake Tahoe in the Sierra mountainous terrain, we have some snow advisories. We may see as much as 1 to 3 inches of snow accumulate overnight tonight. Now, looking at the temperatures, you'll notice that we are still experiencing some 60s across the Dakota area. But overnight tonight, those temperatures will be falling very warm ahead of the frontal boundary across the Tennessee Valley area, where we are expecting